Take up the broken sword of your father
and strike down the darkness.
Amen. Greetings, everyone. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Nick.
And we are the Gosslings, a digital speakeasy of free thinkers, Christian authors, explorers of the esoterica, and general purveyors of buffoonery.
That's right. We have an amazing interview and conversation for you. But if you would first, it really, really helps us if you would take up the broken sword of your finger, strike down that subscribe button, and while you're down there, tinkle that bell.
Yeah, give that bell a gentle caress, or keep your YouTube pin pan strong and smack that bell. Smack it like it owes you money.
That's right. And if you've already done those things, well, first of all, thank you. But also, if you'd hit the like button, that would really, really help us because it shows the algorithm that you like this video and other people who have shared interests will also like it. That would help tremendously.
Yeah, that's right. Leave a comment, share it with your friends, send it to your enemies, do all the things.
That's right.
Who cares?
Who cares? And without further ado, here is this video's conversation and interview. We hope you guys enjoy it.
That's right. Vertical punch.
Your YouTube feed is crap. Stop wasting your time watching bot-boosted shills and self-appointed gurus cloying for your attention. Instead, join the Gosslings interview live stream and podcast. The Gosslings, a dark-lit digital speakeasy of free thinkers. A super chat of radical truth-seeking wizards who eat trolls for second breakfast. Topics that'll make your mama's hair stand on end. Ideas that'll make your pastor's knees knock. Guests that will illuminate the hidden chambers of your mind. And interviews that strike down the darkness. Welcome to the Gosslings.
Jessie Czebotar, back again for round 3. We are going to talk about a bunch of things. We're going to talk about September 11th and its ties to Jesus's birthday. Really want to get your opinion on that and your insights on that. And then we have a really cool Patreon question from one of our patrons that we'll get to. And then we'd like to get your insights on the Sound of Freedom, because you and I have talked about that before, but we haven't talked about it on the show yet. But before we do all that, I do have just a real surface level question that, and this is a total curveball. I haven't mentioned this to anybody, but this crops up in my head every now and then. What is the difference between prayer and witchcraft?
Well, with prayer, and again, you have to define the prayer. If we're talking about authentic prayer, prayer is about your relationship with God. So it's communication with God, and there's a back and forth. There's a relationship connection there between you and the Almighty God. But with witchcraft, what witchcraft is, it goes back to the Hebrew word that's talked about in the book of Genesis, that is both knowledge and knowing. And Scripture relates that knowledge. It means that at a quantum level, you're entangling with. So think about that. When the Lord says, to Adam and Eve, a man shall leave his father and his mother and shall cleave to his wife. What is that about? It's that intimate knowing and entangling. So what magic is, or witchcraft is that you are entangling with something other than God. You're expecting to get a response. So there's a communication, a connection, but it's done by yourself outside of God. So that's the difference of witchcraft.
Question for you about that. What about trying to have that type of communication with an angel, like a guardian angel?
Yeah.
Yeah, if the Lord, so there are select scriptures where the Lord sent angels as messengers to people. So you've got Abraham, you've got Jacob, you've got some later, you've got Mary and Joseph, both received special messages from angels, as well as Zechariah and I don't think Elizabeth, his wife, did, but Zachariah, who was a priest, did receive an angel, and they came directly and gave messages. Now, with each of those circumstances, you have where that angelic being proclaims God is the Most High, proclaims that they were specifically sent by God, and that they had a message to give, and they delivered that message. Those messages were always accompanied with a sign and a miracle. So that's important to understand, that it's, it was part of the fulfillment of God's word, and that word came true or was fulfilled. So, if I hear that a lot, people will say, well, I'm seeing all these numbers pop up on my clock. Like every time I look, I see a 111 or a 222. And I encourage people, don't fall for it. You're going to get a lot of demonic beings who are trying to connect with you in the spirit world. And what's your first thing? You're like, oh, it's a sign, something's trying to reach out. And you're going to start investigating, and you're going to turn to numerology and geometry and like all these other forms of basically fortune telling. I mean, it's kind of like getting a magic 8 ball, and you're shaking that ball and you're like, tell me the answer. What's the outcome? What can I expect? Right.
I have a question.
We start to use things as oracles. But we gotta be cautious. So go ahead, BJ.
My question was, when you talk about oracles and shaking 8 balls and things like that, how does that relate to watching demonic movies or hearing, music, or is that some kind of an oracle?
Question. Yeah.
Does that open up something,
Like, can you dabble too much with those things?
A little different. Yeah, I guess. I mean, if you're watching those things to try to gain information or gain a direction, or you're using it as a sign, then yes, it would be an oracle. But I think that, the oracles are different than an axis or a doorway. The oracles are something that you seek out, and then you're using it almost as a form of divination or fortune telling to gain information or knowledge. So that aside, music, movies, other things can just straight up be doorways. There are curses, there are embedded things to those that Satanists and Luciferians, they will curse it so that when you watch it, basically you open an access point into your home for these beings to come in. So many things can be access points. And in fact, all of us have a phone. The majority of us have phones, TVs with the black screens. Those are no different than black mirrors. Yep. They're a gateway that the enemy can get access to. Anything that we engage with that revolves around sin can be an access point or a gateway.
Yeah. These things really are. They are the black mirror, and they're the pool of Narcissus. You stare into them, and they just, they suck your soul out by feeding you empty calorie, just like seawater when you're, stranded.
I have a lot of really strong opinions about smartphones. I think that
Nick's the one guy on planet Earth who hates smartphones more than me, and that's impressive.
Thank you. I try. I'm willing to take on challengers.
At the gauntlet is thrown.
The interesting thing about the smart device, though, is that it is a doorway. It is a portal. It is a portal, but it's also an oracle. It's both. That's what makes it dangerous. It's both. You go to it to get your answers, but
tied to AI.
Yeah, and at the same time, it can open up a portal to all these evil influences, cursed, product, movies, media coming at you, and Uniquely, it is the one thing we're enslaved to more than any other thing that we own.
Oh yeah.
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 Well, it's interesting, like just bringing up the word smart itself. That, and we're not talking intelligence here, we're talking something else. Ted Gunderson was was an individual who was working with the FBI. His job specifically was to take cases that revolved around satanic ritual, or we could say, kind of like the paranormal type things that, so his job was to investigate those things. And he used to have a very strong comment. He would say, all finders, which who were the finders? The finders were those, in the days of Nixon who were caught for trafficking children. They also were connected to the three-letter agencies within, our government. And he would say all finders went to smart school. Now, what's interesting is we see that those who were connected to the finders became connected to groups that were involved with the psychiatric care and mental health of SRA victims and survivors. They started a program called SMART and, began to put out information through that. Now we have smart cities, we have smartphones, so it's interesting. Yep. I just think there is so much more to it that is not for our benefit.
Are the finders tied to the Franklin scandal at all?
Yes.
That's right. I think that's where I've heard them before. We would love to get an interview with the author of the Franklin scandal. That's something that like no one ever talks about. I think actually you might be the only guest we've ever had.
I've never even heard of
that. Right?
Never even heard of the Franklin scandal.
Yeah. I know it's like sort of tangential to your wheelhouse on the Zen or the Venn diagram, Jesse, but like just educate people a little bit about the Franklin scandal, if you don't mind, because I think it is relevant to your ministry and to what you have going on, and in a way that's documented and verifiable, that like if people wanted to see actual court documents about this stuff, they could via the Franklin scandal.
Yeah, I mean, you can also look it up on timothycharleshomeseth.com and search the finders. But during Nixon's era, you had some scandals. The part that kind of came out was the Watergate scandal, but hidden behind that, you had the Franklin scandal, which, basically we had three-letter agencies that were buying, selling, and trafficking children for sexual exploitation. So that's really what that was about. And they attempted to cover that up. But, when we look at that, there were so many different aspects to how they were moving and transporting children that really the Franklin scandal just covers one kind of situation, or like kind of one avenue or aspect of that.
One dimension of the.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. One dimension. Yeah.
Didn't they, if I remember correctly, it was like a couple of guys who had ties to all the alphabet agencies. I can't remember if they were in Illinois or where, but they were tied to a specific city. And were they utilizing CPS and orphanages? Maybe I'm getting that one, the Franklin scandal, mixed up with something else, but
I think that that's part of it. When it starts to broaden out, is that you had the connection between the government using government-funded programs or church-funded programs through the orphanages, and then it opens up broader through the school systems, and
yeah. Nick Bryant is the author of the Franklin scandal. The Franklin scandal, a story of power brokers, child abuse, and betrayal. And he's done like maybe 3 interviews. I mean, the guy almost, he, in a way, he's kind of like you, where like I think he kind of like stays off the radar. a little bit, you know,
Mhm,
which is like
mhm.
how you know you've touched a nerve. You know,
Sure.
Yeah,
you've
yeah,
sort of like, oh
definitely.
yeah, you're over the target because like you're catching flack. Um, so yeah. Well, speaking of which, do you want to do the Patreon question, or would you rather talk about Sound of Freedom?
No, well, you know what? Let's do Sound of Freedom because I
Yeah,
think
that's a
that's
good
more
segue.
pressure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you. The wanted to get your thoughts on the recent film Sound of Freedom. I want to see if you saw it. What do you think about it? What are we not being told about that film?
Yeah, I did see it, and I want to first say, I want to look at what I appreciated about it. I think, especially being a survivor, somebody who's come out of situations, I wasn't sexually trafficked, but I was trafficked through the US military, through the school systems, um, through the churches, and exploited as, a governmental or exploited in the governmental experiments and training programs. So being a survivor, it is so important to have this information coming out. Um, you know, Trafficking, whether it's children or human trafficking in general, or, organ harvesting, blood harvesting, all of those things should be on the forefront. There should be, nothing more important. And, you know, it should be at the top of our list when we are thinking of who are we going to vote into positions in our government, whether local or within our states or federally. If people aren't willing to address this topic, then they don't need to be, running our government or our state or our local areas. That's about the end of the story.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that it brings out, you know, the topic itself. Also some of the problems, who for so many years eyes kind of have been shut. Things have been happening and people have been bound in positions where their hands were tied. They know that evil's going on, but they can't do anything about it. So I really appreciated that it brings out those truths. Those are things that we need to find solutions for. However, kind of some of the things that I, and I'll just say I wish there would have been more with it. It really only focuses on, a very small dimension of the issue. Primarily, it focused on, trafficking happening in third world countries or across the border, and you know, only focused on kind of the trafficking happening through the avenue of, you have certain women that will do talent type things, and through that, they're pulling kids in, whether it's Hollywood or others across the world. They're pulling kids in and um, entering them into basically child porn and exploitation. So, there's so much more to that, though. They don't even get anywhere near, the truth that really, there's so much satanic ritual involved. Um, they don't get into the ritual murders. I've brought out in some of my talks, all the ways that the system will exploit just one child. And, out of that, the very first way is sexually. Now, that's the only way that movie covers. But what happens next? What happens after the child has been used to their full extent? Well, then they start, they put that child on the market again, and people pay money to have that child ritually killed, cannibalized. Okay, so after that, after they're cannibalized and ritually killed, then they pay more money to have that child turned into a diamond. Um, that diamond then can be kept as a trophy. So you have individuals like the Vatican who, the Pope likes to have his ring with all his diamonds on it. That says quite a bit about him. But they'll turn into a diamond, and they'll either keep or they'll sell that diamond. Now, here's where a lot of the profiting is happening, is that, our U.S. military is connected to companies that are supposedly making lab-grown diamonds. Lab-grown is just a term. It's like organic and all natural. They are basically, making human diamonds, and they're
How do they
using them
do
as
that?
weapons. People can look up that process. They do it now. It's offered for cremation as well. When I was a kid, I've testified that I saw that being done. A lot of the Catholic churches would have incinerators, and they would just incinerate under the high heat, and they would get diamonds.
Wow.
When they were done, and this is interesting because even, I don't know if we can say it for YouTube, but we'll just say there's that specific island that was where the guy was caught who, they had set up to have all the kids transported and abused on that island.
The guy who killed himself.
Yes,
Jail?
that
guy.
one.
That guy's
Yeah.
island.
Yeah.
That guy, he happened to have an incinerator. And when the videos went out about the raid, they had found a whole bunch of diamonds. So who was really given the Vatican diamonds? I think there was a strong connection there that he had an incinerator on that island. And
Can I ask you a question? I thought that Catholics didn't believe in cremation. I thought their theology kind of required them to be buried, or maybe I'm off.
that's very interesting. It would be interesting to have to dig up all those graves because I think we'd find a lot of them would be empty.
Empty caskets.
Yeah, because otherwise, what's the purpose of having an incinerator? You got to ask these questions like, why do they have an incinerator if they don't believe in anything but burial?
Yeah.
Well,
Jonathan,
it's
you
because
have a
they're
shovel, right?
really cremating children that they ritually kill that are not documented. So after they're done with that, though, they get their diamonds from each child, and then they sell the ashes first to the pharmacia as filler, so it goes into drugs. Second, to our food companies.
Which, by the way, for anybody who thinks like that's beyond the pale, like that's crazy pants. I mean, Sandra Bullock went on Ellen, I think, one time like 10 years ago, talking about the face cream that she used was from like the circumcised, the foreskins, basically, of babies. Yeah. And then Project Veritas proved that, abortion clinics sell the baby parts.
They're selling.
Yeah. So like there's
and parts.
verifiable precedent that is at least connected to what you're talking about.
Right. And we didn't even get into the sell of the organs or the blood. That's a whole nother realm and aspect that goes into. So, I mean, all those are all the ways that they do profit off of just one child. So it's a vast market.
Yeah. Well, and adrenochrome is listed in the NIH, which I did not believe until I saw the Sean Ryan interview with Jim Caviezel, where they actually superimposed the entry in the NIH's chemical, lexicon or directory, and like, yep, there it is, and then that episode got pulled. So
right.
Did it really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
but I mean, I have questions. I encourage people really look into those connected to the movie. It's interesting.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, those in the movie, they wear a specific cross. You'll see that cross both throughout the movie as well as at the very end. That is the Jerusalem cross, and it is connected to a brotherhood order called the Order of Jerusalem. They are directly paid under the Vatican. They are considered part of the sovereign military of Knights Templars.
Oh yeah, it's they're in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Exactly.
My soul is
Yeah,
prepared, Dr.
Ark.
Jones. How about yours?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
guy.
I would propose that, that's connected to the light side. You also have a very interesting, project. NORAD, the military base, is called the Ark. It
Oh, yes.
extends 80 stories underground.
Uh-huh.
I would tell you that it is not a building, that it's actually a spaceship, and that's why it's called the Ark.
Okay.
And anyway,
Like
but the Ark is connected to Indiana Jones, and
right. Yeah.
I think that the film was just one way that they profited. The U.S. military sold national security information, and they, to filmmakers, and that was how we got the Indiana Jones series. But anyway.
Okay. Yeah, that actually ties into our Patreon member question a little bit down the road. But we'll keep talking about, or I'm sorry. Were you gonna say something?
No, I was going to jump into that Patreon question. Actually.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
If it's a good time.
Yeah, let's go ahead and knock that one out of the park, and then
we're talking about movies.
Back. I know, right? Yeah.
Yeah. This question is from one of our patrons. Her name is Margaret, and Margaret asks, "We hear that there is more truth in movies. Is there any truth?" And this is kind of a new movie she mentioned. Is there any truth to the movie's Avatar? And if there is it in the spiritual realm only that we'd find that truth, or both physical and spiritual realm? Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I would say the truths are both in the physical and the spiritual realms. My experience with the U.S. military programs and projects was that, they interface with spiritual gates. So, that, I guess if you think of like an hourglass, you have the physical world, and then you have that little space in between, and then you would have the spiritual world beyond. Now, I've brought out truths that, how do you get into it, or how do you move from one world to another dimension? The military, people can look these things up. They classify it as forms of remote viewing. So there's two different kinds. The first kind, you have to leave your physical body behind. It's called astral projection. And, your spirit separates from your physical body, and you would enter into that spirit world in the spirit state, and, you would interface with that. So in that, can they put physical type things, avatars that your body or your soul could connect to, that gives you a temporary physical body in that spirit world? Yeah, they can do that. The only issue is that, you have a time limit. There's only so long your physical body can survive without your spirit. So, there's a limitation on that. The other way is the way that, I experience things, is that, my soul and body don't separate. So either I had to completely physically go into the spirit world, or I would see things in vision form. So I could be one place, but clear as day, I could see that spirit realm at the same time as I was seeing the physical realm. So both are, applicable. And yeah, they do create avatars to use in the spirit world.
Interesting. Are there other movies or media, and it's hilarious, by the way, that we call it media, considering the occult origins of the goddess Medea,
Right, which is
yeah.
I was gonna say it's demonic name.
Yeah, goddess of
So is
deception.
metaverse is
Yeah.
meta comes from Metatron.
Yeah. Hey everyone, I'm Jonathan Goss with the Gosslings. Give your inner Christian warrior something to really gravitate towards and feed upon with Heavenly Realms, a series of 7 novels about angelic warfare written by me, yours truly. It is masculine, warrior-based fiction that is biblically based, but is extremely gratifying for the warrior in all of you. It is available on Amazon in paperback, ebook, and audiobook. If you like it, leave a review. If you want signed copies, you can always email us at thegoslingsgroup@gmail.com. And I would really love to hear from you. Again, Heavenly Realms by Jonathan Goss, available on Amazon. Check it out. Yeah. So are there other intellectual properties that are particularly relevant to spiritual warfare in the modern age?
You mean, like, are you looking for other, like, movies or show names that? Yeah, I mean, you have a ton. The Star Wars, the Indiana Jones series. You have The Simpsons, which I believe that The Simpsons, um, where did they get that from? I think that they were sold information that came from the biofeedback sessions of children that were used in the looking glass experiments. Um, you get a whole bunch that are connected to that network. Futurama, uh, Flintstones, Jetsons all had aspects, elements of those things. Guardian of the Galaxies. You get the whole Wolverine and X-Men series, all based off these individuals that have superpowers, super abilities. So I think a lot of those are interconnected. Disney definitely, they've got some superhero villain stuff that they've been bringing forward. I think that those are all based off real time, real life projects, experiments, and programs with real children or people involved.
And do those supernatural abilities, those superpowers, do they come from pacts with demons or contracts with Lucifer?
They come from several different things. The first is natural abilities and authority that God's given. So there are those that have the authority to perform miracles. But otherwise, you do have from the contracts with the demons that are fallen angels that also have spiritual gifts and abilities. When you have a demonic in a human host and they share, like, the system purposely looks for those that have similar gifts and abilities, because then it enhances when you put the two together.
Yeah. Well, and you're not the only person to ever to kind of go back to the Sound of Freedom and child sacrifice. You're not the only person to ever talk about child sacrifice being a part of this. There's I was trying to find her name and I couldn't, but there was a woman who described being in a black mass when she was younger, and I can't remember if she was one of the children who was involved in it or not, but she was middle-aged when she gave the talk, and it's on YouTube. I wish I could find the name, but
Wasn't Arizona Wilder, was it?
it might be.
Okay.
She was but there have been others too. There's
Yeah, there's a lot of people who come
there were some
forward.
British children who have been interviewed about it, like on 60 Minutes. I mean, it's not, that satanic panic thing is like, everybody like jokes about that, but like I think there was a lot of just cause.
Yeah, the reason to panic.
Yeah.
When you hear stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, and two, when you talk about the military and just the government in general, I'm often reminded of the Kay Griggs interview, which was like 6 hours long, done back in, I want to say, the early to mid 2000s maybe. And her husband was a Marine Corps colonel George Griggs, and she talked about all the stuff that she saw. Apparently once you hit colonel and above, that becomes a very political position. And she talked about all of the ritualistic sexual stuff that they would do and the blackmail involved. And it's tied to their forms of Satanism that they would have. And she gave that talk shortly after her husband died. And correlation to that, there is also the rumor from multiple people in the intelligence side of different branches of the military who said that Obama gutted the military of everybody colonel and above in 2011 who wasn't willing to fire on their own citizens. They were all given early retirement if they said no. I've heard this from multiple people, and why colonel and above? Well, because a colonel is in charge of an AO, an area of operation. So like if a hurricane hits, and the National Guard is sent in, it's a colonel who's put in charge of that. So they're like regional commanders, so it's like once you hit colonel, that's where your position is no longer purely military. It's now somewhat political, and it just gets more from there. So like this stuff exists, people have been talking about it for decades, and like, but it never really gets out there into the zeitgeist. And it's probably far stranger, like, than what most of us are led to believe. But like, even if like it seems crazy to somebody, it's like, well, dude, look at this Kay Griggs interview. Look at like these children on 60 Minutes who are talking about being, trafficked and sacrificed by these Satanists. Like, clearly, at the very least, there are enough people talking about this thing who aren't looking to make a dime. By the way, Kay Griggs died in a car accident shortly after giving that interview.
Oh, wow.
So,
wow.
Yeah. So it just, there are obviously things that are extremely dark that are happening because there are enough people who don't know each other across decades who are talking about it, who are not looking to make a dime off of it,
Right.
It's funny to me that, YouTube, arguably the world's largest search engine, would allow conversations like this about these things.
Yeah.
Do they just not have the staff or technology to pinpoint these kind of conversations? Why wouldn't they want to silence this interview?
Yeah.
I think because they want to keep it, they want to keep these type of things as conspiracy theories,
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah.
They put it out there, but they want to, in a way that's a subtle way of debunking or trying to debunk, is by putting it out there and allowing it to be there, and people think, oh, because they've labeled it conspiracy theory, it's not real.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And that's a smart way of doing it, because there are some things that I have found, certain naughty books that we will not discuss here, but certain no books that the powers that be don't want you to have. And the simple fact that that they are out of print, that like you can't find them on Amazon, even used, you can't find them hardly anywhere, to me is an indicator of where there's smoke, there's fire, so like, if an organization comes out and says, oh, that book, no, we're not going to allow that book to be published, instead of just letting it, hang itself by its own rope, live and die on its own merits, and just let me be the judge. If you come along and you silence and censor something, well, now I'm really curious, because I already don't trust you.
Yeah.
So now I really want to know why you're not allowing me to, which is it's a basic human.
Right.
trait.
So if they allow it and, people get on there then and they're like, oh, it's not, forbidden. It's not. So therefore they devalue it. Yeah. They devalue it. And yeah.
Well, let's get to September 11th.
Oh, yeah. 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 This has been good. We've probably got another 40 minutes as I break the set.
Oh, thanks. Thanks. Appreciate that.
Nick worked really hard on the set, and I'm just going to come in like a wrecking ball, Taylor Swift style, and just,
That's all right. So,
was it Taylor Swift? I don't know.
It's
the wrecking ball. No, that's the other chick.
Miley Cyrus.
Miley Cyrus.
Yes,
Yeah,
Cyrus.
I should know that as a Nashvilleian.
No, it's
Sorry, Billy Ray.
Yeah, we don't.
Probably an occultist, anyways. I don't care. Sorry. Anyways.
So tell us about September 11th. What is the significance of that? And what is your not only the significance of the date, but the significance of the event on September 11th, 2001?
Well, the system likes to do mass, we'll just say mass deaths, mass rituals. And so that's, one of those throughout history. You'll see a lot happening on that day with kind of, the epitome really that was publicized was 9/11. And, what is that day? It's the believed true birthday of Jesus Christ. Why did the system in the church promote December 25th as Christ's birthday? It's because really that is Nimrod's birthday.
Okay.
Nimrod was the king of Babylon. So,
Tower of Babel guy.
Yeah, the Tower of Babel, and who was in an incestuous relationship with his own mother, Samaris, who was seen as a goddess representing the Isis trio.
A mighty hunter against the Lord.
Yeah, but that's really where that comes from. And there's a lot of testimony and stuff about that 9/11, when they say it was an inside job, what are they meaning inside it? It means that our own people in our own government were involved with that. People who, are part of the Luciferian Brotherhood. And it was a ritual. Some of the things that people need to be aware of is that, out of that event, there were about 3,000 children that supposedly were in daycares in or near around that building, that not a single body was ever found. I think it was one of the biggest human trafficking, fake death events that ever happened. I think that besides, those children that just mysteriously went missing,
Yep.
as well as some of the airplane attendants and pilots, story has it, from, people connected to the military, that as our good military was going through doing rescues, that they found the flight attendants and staff that were supposed to be on the plane that hit the Pentagon, or that was supposed to hit the Pentagon.
Mm-hmm.
So supposedly those individuals were found not dead, but were found being trafficked and held captive underground. So we have to ask, what's really happening with the children? That breaks it open to our current day with Maui.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hawaii.
Took words right out of my mouth.
The kids, all the schools just happened to cancel. And then, what are the chances? And then all those children, supposedly around 2,000, are missing and gone. There's another connection. It was reported by those connected to the good military doing rescues, supposedly, that, the big California rescue, which was about 2,100 kids. Now that 2,000 is close enough in number. We never figured out what happened with those kids, the 2,100 rescued. There's a lot of hush-hush around that. So I have to ask, were they just moved? Were these kids really returned to family and parents, or were they just moved? And have they been being moved for a long time? Months later, Timothy, it was like almost a year or so later, all of a sudden it pops up again in the news that 2,100 kids were supposedly rescued, but he proposed that it was the same kids, that they had just been moved from the California base and were moving them still. How far did it go? Did they take them all the way back towards Hawaii in an effort to keep these children being trafficked? So there's a lot of interesting things about 9/11 that then come out. was it one of the largest scams in American history? But not just a scam, because real people died. Who were the real people who died in that situation? And this is with the proposal that maybe, there were people initially in the event who were trafficked, but what happened after was that you had all these firefighters, all these support staff who went in there, and because of the soot and everything, stuff that was in the air, many of those people who were there to try to help dig up bodies and stuff ended up dying.
Yeah.
So you have mass deaths there that occurred. It's supposed that certain individuals like HRC were across the street, when it happened, eating lunch.
Not surprised.
Watching it go down. I mean, we saw the same thing. Michelle Obama was on a boat as Notre Dame burned down.
Oh, yeah.
No
And
kidding.
not many people know this. There's an interesting little tidbit about that.
Yeah.
Before that happened, I don't know if many people have heard of Bohemian Grove.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we interviewed Mike Hansen,
Yeah.
one of the guys who snuck into Bohemian Grove with Alex Jones.
Okay, yeah. So some
Yeah.
interesting things. So Bohemian Grove
Yeah.
was run by by Belanoff. We'll just call her Belanoff. But they had a website and everything. So a couple years back, they put up a post that said all communications for Bohemian Grove were being transferred to the Cathedral of Luxembourg, which that's the true name for Notre Dame.
Yep.
So you got to ask, why is Notre Dame all of a sudden handling all the phone calls for Bohemian Grove, right?
Interesting.
Uh-huh.
And then it was shortly after that was pointed out that all of a sudden, Michelle was there in a boat drinking wine, watched the whole thing burn, and the whole thing went down on the ground. So,
yeah.
So are you saying that Notre Dame was burned intentionally to destroy like a data center or a communication center for the Bohemian Grove?
Well, it was a communication center. They were receiving all the calls, kind of acting like a secretary for Bohemian Grove. But beyond a communication center, I mean, they were one of the, probably the third or fourth massive library of occultic books was underneath there. I heard one individual, he was kind of joking, when I inquired and said, I was down there, I didn't see a library and I didn't take any books with me as I left. So
Interesting. Well, getting back to 9/11, if it is the actual birth date of Christ, as you say, why would they choose that day for a mass ritual like that?
I believe it's to make it a mockery, all throughout scripture you see massacres that were occurring around the birth dates of the deliverers. Was it payback to God because of, he sent the angel to take the lives of the firstborn of all Egypt when, Pharaoh wouldn't let his people go? It could be, but we see first, Pharaoh, when he hears that the deliverer is supposed to be born in the days of Moses, what does he do? He massacres all the male children that are 2 years and younger. We see that same massacre happen during Christ's birth. Initially, when Herod puts out the warning and, is seeking to kill all the children, male children that are 2 years and younger. So, that massacre seems to be consistent throughout generations. And, it's really interesting too, because I believe you have a certain time frame between those things of about 2,000 years. So between the massacre of the males in Moses's day to the birth of Jesus, I believe you have about a 2,000-year period in there. And then again from Christ to 9/11, again about another 2,000 years, I think. I could be wrong on that. My math is always bad, but you get some interesting time frames between those.
I think it might be, but I thought Moses, BJ, correct me if I'm wrong. I think Moses was.
Is that 4,000 years?
No, I thought it was
1500 BC.
Oh, okay. I was thinking 1200 BC. So yeah,
Somewhere
1500 BC. Yeah. Solid stretch. Are you looking to actualize your inner Leonidas? Are you looking to find something for the Spartan in your life? Look no farther than Jardani Jovanovic. Jardani Jovanovic hair and skincare products made by real men for real men. Or as I like to say, be as sexy as you are deadly. Give 007 a run for his money. Awaken your inner John Wick with Jardani Jovanovic hair and skincare products. Solid stretch. How do we know? Like, because I've heard this theory before. In fact, I've heard the theory before of September 11th being Jesus's birthday, which is why I initially brought it up with you, Jesse. But I'm trying to remember where that theory originates from, as far as us being able to pinpoint September 11th, even vaguely, as being Jesus's birthday.
Yeah, I don't know where that. I just have to say I don't have the exact information on that.
I've heard some astronomical calculations done about it.
Rob Skiba did a good presentation on that, I think.
Oh, yeah. Rob Skiba also did some great stuff for Nimrod, like as far as information on Nimrod, being like the first sort of global emperor, with the Tower of Babel.
Yep.
Yeah.
Dude, we lost a good one when Rob went down.
I know.
I think they zapped him.
You think so?
Yeah. I don't know.
Dude,
he was way healthier than all of us.
Talk to me about December 25th being Nimrod's birthday. I don't think I've ever heard that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that is what is taught in a lot of occultic circles. That's really what it is about, is Nimrod's birthday.
So the Freemasons ostensibly, maybe worship is a strong word for it, but highly revere, almost as their archon, King Solomon, because he built the temple. Really, especially if you look at like some probably Alexandra videos, and you look at some other stuff, they really probably worship Godriel, which is probably just an analog for Lucifer. But Nimrod is one of those Christian esoterica figures that we're all familiar with, but I don't really know how Nimrod ties to the occult in the Luciferian Brotherhood in the same way that like Solomon does for the Masons. Does that make sense? Like, I get it on like an a philosophical level, but I don't know how, like, what the vein is that ties,
that connects Nimrod to Solomon,
or that connects Nimrod to like being somebody that the Luciferians would genuinely care about, outside of just like, he's the guy that tried to attack
it's about
God.
the genetics, and then some of their great apostasy beliefs. Like the great apostasy goes back to the seed of Cain, and to fully understand what is the seed of Cain about and the seed of Christ about, that's upper brotherhood teachings that and it can take many forms, like more the Jewish mythology behind that they'll kind of pull off, claims a couple different things. Either it claims that Eve was not Adam's first wife, so you have Lilith, who really was the demonic angel, and some of that will twist it, where they even say Satan himself appeared as Lilith, and from that was impregnated with Cain.
The concubine of hell. You know?
Right. Um, so you kind of have this, like all these different theories going forward from there that, um, whether it was Eve or, some will propose that there was an ancestral relationship between, when scripture talks about Cain walking in and seeing the nakedness of his father, that really imposed a incestuous relationship between Cain and his mother. So that's what they propose. So there's kind of this ideology of the incest and the, or sex with demons is kind of the other way to put that. So then going forward, you have Israel themselves who, began to seek God for a Messiah and a king. They wanted to deliver somebody who physically would represent them. When God physically appeared as a cloud and a fire at night, they said, we don't want that. We need somebody physical. So then, he actually appeared to them at the mountain and spoke directly to them. And they said, no, we don't want that either. We want a physical king like the other nations. God, don't speak to us anymore. You're terrifying us. We can't take it. Speak only to Moses. So if you have trouble hearing God, you can thank Israel for that. They're the ones who put in the request. But anyway, they rejected
Thanks.
God all along. And then what happens? He literally comes in the physical. And what did they do? They crucify him. This is not our Messiah, they say. We are still looking for him, even though he fulfilled over 250 prophecies, several which he had no control over. This is not our God. So they're still looking for a Messiah.
Of course, because Jesus didn't throw off the Roman yoke.
Right. I mean, so all along you have these kind of that behind those beliefs is, who's the deliverer of the people, who's the Messiah. So they start to pull into these different stories. You have Samaris, who literally was raising up Nimrod as God. She was proclaiming her son she was having, incestuous sex with as God. And he kind of became that imagery of Ra, the sun god, the one in power. And from there, then it kind of alluded to beliefs of the Antichrist. But even in that, you've got Jezebel who comes in as a woman taking headship over, over Israel, a foreign woman. We can't forget that she was a foreign woman who was queen over Israel. And there's an interesting passage, and I know it's in the book of Kings or Chronicles, but it's a little verse that struck me. I read it like years and years ago. I think I was like 18 when I read it. But what happened after Jezebel was that you have Ahab, and it says that, because after it was after she died, I thought, and she was so evil and wicked, that it caused, all of Israel to be, like their enemies to come against them. Israel was in a famine, and even to the extent where they started to cannibalize their children because of the famine they were in. And it says that Ahab went through the land, and when he heard the women talking about cannibalizing their children, it said he repented. He sought the Lord and he repented, and he grieved that Israel had gotten to that point. And I think that's when he realized the wickedness that Jezebel had brought on the nation. So that's an interesting verse that, she opened up the doors for that.
Where did Jezebel come from? What was her? Was she? Oh, okay.
She was a princess of Babylon.
Gotcha. Okay. You had mentioned something about Cain seeing the nakedness of his father. Now I'm familiar with that from the story of Noah. right? After the
Yeah,
flood.
Ham saw his father's nakedness.
Yeah, I had never heard of where does the
Oh,
anecdote
Cain
about
was the
Cain?
seed then that came from that. Ham saw the nakedness, so that Cain is the offspring of, yeah, it was Ham who saw it. Sorry, that was my,
Canaan. Because
Cain.
Noah says cursed be Canaan.
Oh, okay. I
yeah,
got
so
you. Yeah.
Cain was the curse, so he was the offspring that came from that incestuous relationship.
Gotcha. Okay. Where
Yeah,
does
that was
the
my bad. Sorry.
no,
That's
that's
okay.
all right.
That's all right.
Uh, and then you talk about the incestuous nature of Nimrod and his mother. Does that come from occult literature, or does that come from extra biblical, like non-canonical
I
texts,
think
or is
that
that in
comes
the canonical
occult
Bible?
literature, and then that's where they get the imagery um, for the Madonna and her child. That's not, they claim that that's Mary and Jesus, but really it's supposed to represent Samaris and Nimrod.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Of course. I mean,
I was actually going to ask you about
sponsored by the
role.
Vatican, so
Yeah.
why would that not?
Well, in the Patreon, in the exclusive segment, we were talking about Ashtaroth and Isis, and we were talking about these types
Isis,
of relationship
the
and
mother
this,
of heaven.
yeah, the mother goddess.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Catholics have that.
Oh yeah.
I wonder if it's
It's
a
really
connection
the
there.
only like point of contention between Protestants and Catholics. Is just like, dude, like whenever a priest starts talking about the whole Mary thing, like all of us Protestants are like, I'm out. I'm done.
Mary's a big
That's
issue.
like really the only,
Yeah.
I mean, you could like argue about some other stuff, but like when the Catholics start talking about Mary, like, dude, what are you doing? Like this is not a matriarchal. But it is like I think Gary Wayne's talked about it before too, Jesse, about the link to Isis and the Queen Mother of Heaven, and it's just so interesting to me how the Lord seems to, with very necessary exceptions, the Lord seems to work through men, but Lucifer, and your story seems to echo this, so much. Lucifer loves to work through women. I mean, it's just so much of what, and I don't mean that in a misogynistic way, but it's almost, it goes back to the Garden of Eden. Like Satan didn't try to tempt Adam, the serpent didn't try to tempt Adam. The serpent tempted Eve because he knew, I mean, dude, that's an easy target because she's new. She's naive, and so like you can trick her because she's like fresh off the block,
Right.
And so, and he knew he couldn't get away with it with Adam because Adam had the wisdom of the Lord, and that's
It's
like,
all about, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, like, that's such a profound metaphor for the state of Western civilization and where we're at, because like it's like men have just collectively, societally, like handed over the reins of any sort of like godly leadership and authority, which leadership ultimately is sacrifice. It's not domineering, it's not tyranny, it's sacrifice, and so like it's like we've just handed over the reins in this Edenic scenario. And just, I mean, women are the largest buying demographic, all marketing, just about all television, with like 3 exceptions, is all, even shows you think are cool, Yellowstone, Sons of Anarchy, like Fringe, all shows we love, like they're all gained towards women. And like all of society is like, I watched the metrosexual movement come up in the early 2000s, So like we've handed the reins over, in a way that as godly men we really probably shouldn't have. And there are so many times where God chooses to use women and does use women to profound effect. But just listening to your story, watching all of these other things, and then reading about mythology, it's like, man, it's fascinating how like Lucifer knows exactly what he's doing.
Do you agree with that, Jesse? Do you see any of that? What's
or
your
am I
perspective
being
on that?
a male chauvinist pig?
No, I think you're right on about that. Within it is all about the authority and God's design, which his design, if people think of like the Jewish festival, which was meant to kind of represent God's design, you have the Feast of Sukkot, which was, they were commanded by God for that to build a house, that would be a temporary house that they would move during the time of that festival. And it was made, it'd have 3 pieces of wood and a roof that they would put over. And, that was supposed to represent, you have, man and woman with God over them, but that back piece represented the joining together of man and woman. The system uses kind of that same symbol with the square or the, triangle or rectangle. They call it the perfectly squared man. And with that, you have the top part, like if you think of a diamond, you've got the top part, which looks like the Masonic compass representing the male. You have the bottom part, the V, representing the female. Put together, what do you get? You get a diamond or a square, just depending on which way you turn it. What does that represent? Well, in alchemy, that's the symbol for earth. So what does it really represent? It represents the authority over earth, the dominion, and God gave that authority to man and woman together. And what the enemy does is he tries to come in. Why does he want homosexuals? Why does he want, lesbians? It's because it takes away from God's design, which gives authority over the earth. So when we step back, when we step out of that design, we give up our authority and our rights, which then gives Lucifer and these demons they're taking our authority because we're giving it away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's it is taking 2 halves that fit together like a little puzzle piece, and then just taking one away, and then taking another half, replicating it, and just trying to just jam them together. I'll stop there so I don't violate YouTube's algorithms.
Violate.
Yeah. I am the violator.
Of YouTube regulations.
Yeah. YouTube loves me, let me tell you. Yeah.
As we get close to wrapping up, I want to ask you a question, a political question, if that's okay.
Sure, why not?
Why not? The season is upon us, right? 'Tis the season. Big election coming up. We got primaries and of course the general next November. Trump's being indicted. I know that President Trump was
the Antichrist.
BJ likes to speculate that Trump's the Antichrist. Yeah, right.
Look at the way Israel.
Okay, BJ, we're gonna have to have a talk about the Antichrist.
Well,
I can make a case.
He can make a good case, and then of course Tim Cohen makes a case that it's Charles. So BJ and I like to argue. I say Charles, he says Trump. But all that to say,
I would disagree with both of you, but I'll just put that out there.
Who's your guy?
And I could tell you why, but
well,
no man knows, so maybe a woman knows.
Hey, there you go.
Actually, we do know to an extent. We can rule out based on what we do know.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, we'll save that for another time because I welcome that challenge.
Well, it's very simple. In one question, I mean, would the Sanhedrin elevate these individuals into their synagogue and proclaim them as God? Because you got to remember, the Antichrist is somebody that the Sanhedrin are going to declare is the long-awaited Messiah.
Well, you might want to take a look. You might want to take a look at some of the articles and the way Israel's treated Trump and the way they've called him the Messiah, the coins of him and Cyrus that says he will build in 70 years the Temple of Jerusalem. Yeah, I think they will. I think they have.
You think Trump
he has to fulfill all the prophecies in Scripture that they've been waiting for.
Oh well, and he's on his way to doing that, and they certainly
didn't come out of Egypt, wasn't born in Bethlehem.
No, we don't know that.
Out of Nazareth.
We don't know that.
We do. He was born in Frankfurt, Germany.
No, that could be lineage. That could be
I mean,
lineage.
Obama was born in Kenya, so
Yeah.
you know, and he got to be
His
president.
lineage is pretty awesome if you want to take a moment to look at it.
So it's the best lineage.
The best
Maybe
lineage, maybe ever. And what's funny is
Frankly, the best lineage
like
ever.
BJ talked about this, but yet like all three of us voted for Trump.
Yeah, we all voted for him.
So,
Of course, I'll vote for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll vote. I mean, I'll vote
He
for the
gets my
Antichrist.
vote,
I'm
my
just
vote,
saying.
of course, you know, absolutely.
So, anyway, back to the question. So, my question is, Trump was someone who, while he was president, he actually tried to do quite a bit regarding like the trafficking issue. And now he's obviously being attacked, right? They're weaponizing the justice system against him. They're trying to get him put away. They're trying to get him in a position where he can't run again. What do you think is going to happen with all that? Do you think he'll go to prison? Do you think he'll be able to run? Do you think he's going to win? Is this all predestined? What do you think's coming?
5D chess.
I think he's already won. What do I believe is happening? I think that, everything that he's been doing that goes along with what initially he set out to do, which was to, he said to the best of his ability, he would end human trafficking. And we see a series of things that he did, including creating an embassies and a committee that would oversee the embassy, so that if people were being trafficked overseas, they would have a place to go, and they would have people who, the people heading up that committee were all individuals who have been trafficked, who understand, the issues and the safety needs and all of that. So all of that was put into place first. And then, he has been highly invested, in my situation, in my affidavits and things. And, we see him go into court after, supposedly he lost and he challenged the election. What do we see next? He filed cases in Florida. One of those cases is a RICO case, and the other is a crimes against humanity case. But the RICO case is against the Clinton Foundation. And, what do we see with that? We see all of a sudden, like, all these indictments and nasty things. In between there, you've got the raid on Mar-a-Lago. When you read the affidavit for that raid, it tells you what they were looking for, and what they were looking for were sealed documents. Now, for those who think that, what did the news make public? They were saying, oh, Trump's got classified information that he shouldn't have, there at Mar-a-Lago. But that's not what the affidavit said they were looking for. There's different forms of classifications. And specifically, it said they were looking for sealed items. Now, the only thing that I know that was sealed were the affidavit testimonies of several witnesses, including mine. They were with the U.S. military. They were pulled from the U.S. military and unlawfully unsealed in the District Court of Minnesota by some of the individuals that are named in those affidavits. And then they were resealed. It was after they were resealed that then we see the raid on Mar-a-Lago looking for the sealed documents. So I think they were trying to see if Trump had copies of that information. Why? Because, I asked for the records and the pictures and, the unredacted information from the children, especially myself, from being in the projects and experiments. And I think they were looking for those materials to see if somebody had those proofs. I'm not saying that this is all about me. There's many survivors that are involved in this, but I think that that's what they were looking for, were those who are going against the U.S. military. And, then we see from there, you see that these people tried to pull several of, those people involved with those affidavits into court, actually family court, trying to get things dismissed in a family court. And so what do they do next? When they're still not winning in that situation, then they begin to try to indict Trump. But I think that, it's a twofold situation, because what happens, we know that in everything that he's been doing, he's already brought down, several levels of the government. He's brought down certain high-level individuals who I've named. I can confirm only a few of their deaths, but we know, George H.W. Bush died. We know John McCain died. We know Hillary Clinton died. I was told that. I was also told John Brennan died. We know the Nazi Michael Karkoc died. We know Colonel Michael Aquino died. I believe that those were executions, because of the crimes that they have committed against children and humanity. So we know that those individuals that, that top tier, the people who are playing them right now, they're actors. We know that's not the real, JB.
Lookalikes. They're lookalikes. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Bad lookalikes. There's at least 5 different people playing Hillary. I mean, so many of these people who are looking like our politicians are not our politicians.
Well, we see that
how
a
do
lot
we
with
know?
Joe Biden. I mean, dude,
What?
I
He
get
looks
those.
nothing like what he.
No,
It doesn't look similar at
No,
all.
he doesn't. He
yeah,
doesn't even write with the right hand either. It's like
yeah.
Oh, really?
he's his signing with the opposite hand than what he's always signed with.
Yeah, his inner
Sketchy.
earlobes are all different, and there are like 4 different versions. It's so bizarre. Dude.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Right?
I mean, and it's either like.
So do they have 4 dementia-riddled old men?
I mean, that is the
they
funny part about
trade
it.
in and out.
You're right? Yeah. Well, I mean,
I don't know. All
I
I propose to, I think it
Yeah.
is, but my top 2 guesses are Jim Carrey or Osama bin Laden. That's who I want to see it be. I want to see it be Osama and have people
That'd be
be
great.
like, "Wait, what? He's still
He
alive?"
just pulls that mask off one day.
No, it's
Allah
Dana, it's
Akbar!
Dana Carvey. It's Dana Carvey. He does great impressions.
Yeah.
It could be a super twist. I mean, I don't know how old he would have to be, but I guess I better look because I don't know how old he has to be. But
It's
there's
Jimmy Stewart.
No, I mean, what if it was actually Hitler?
But wait, no.
Why not? I mean, we live in such absurd
Put it
times,
out
Jesse.
there, if he's supposed to be dead, maybe they
Go for broke.
just
you
a
know?
lot of,
Nah.
young life, young blood or something to bring him back. Who knows?
Hitler's
Maybe he
having
did
way too much
find the
fun in
fountain
Brazil.
of youth.
I mean, he did go to Brazil, so
Well, no, he was here in the United States, in California, actually. You had a whole bunch of them hiding out in mansions underground in California. Yeah, that's where they had Osama bin Laden. You had, yeah.
Well, bin Laden was a CIA asset, with the Mujahideen, and then Operation Paperclip. I mean, we brought so many Nazis over. Dude, they even made a movie about it with Matt Damon about like the fight between us and the USSR to the hungry hippo gobble up as many Nazi scientists as we could, so we could get to the moon.
Well, it's interesting. The current war manual that Michael Aquino wrote, called Mind Wars. It's a trilogy. So you have Mind Wars, you have Starfind. Both of those have kind of like, certain symbols on the cover that are magical symbols. But then you get to the 3rd book in that trilogy, which is Find Far, and the actual symbol on there is the same symbols that were used with Project Paperclip. So kind of interesting.
Wow.
That does not surprise me at all.
We're supposedly using those war manuals right now, But
Oh, we got all those UFOs flying around, you know. We got all
just
that
wait till the ark
technology.
goes up in the air, boys.
I mean, they made a movie about that too. It had Oliver Platt in it, except it was a boat. It wasn't a. I can't remember the name of 2012. Was that the name of the movie?
I don't remember.
It was the one with John Cusack. It came out like all the world is, Yosemite or Yellowstone explodes, and they all have to get to like the mountains because the government has secretly built like a bunch of arcs,
Arcs in the mountains, right? That's NORAD. Maybe what other arcs are in the mountains, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You got Uranus is another one they named. I mean, you got Urlantia, Atlantis. I think they made one too.
Yeah. It just nothing surprises me at this point.
No.
We live in such absurdly bizarre times, that like, dude, I'd kill to go back to 99.
Yeah.
Just, when South Park was new and the world was just people arguing about stupid crap. Anyways. Well, Jesse, this has been awesome. As always, we really appreciate you coming on here. I don't have any more questions. Nick, you got any?
Got them all.
Or BJ, you got anything else?
You're
No.
good, man.
Yeah?
Right.
Right.
Good.
Well, Jesse, where can people find you, and what do you have coming up next that people can check out?
Absolutely. I did want to give one more reference too.
Yeah.
I did an extensive show with my colleague on the Reveal Report on the
Nice.
Nimrod and Christmas situation. So if you go back and look for the Christmas episodes, George gets a lot more into the history of Nimrod and how the occult used that. So I wanted to give that as a reference for people. But otherwise, you can find me on kingdomlivingwithjessie.com and illuminatethedarkness.com. I do have some upcoming workshops. I'll be in Austin October 19th through the 21st. And so that's the Beautifully Adorned workshop, which is more focused on healing. And I do get into, I think in the Patreon, we kind of broke down more about the demonic spirits and the principalities. So if you want to know more about that, that's where I really break it down and talk about how to break those attachments that may have been made for you willingly or unwillingly. So that's a great, the course is on there too, which has far more information than the workshop, but the workshop's coming up. And then I also, in October, will be up in Canada with the Reveal Report. And stay tuned for that one because we will have Roseanne Barr with us.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
So
all right.
that'll be great.
Boy, she's made a comeback, hasn't she?
Oh, she has. Yeah, she's so hilarious. I love Roseanne.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah,
So-
she's even more of a she's got me beat in like the firecracker,
I think she
like
does.
wild card kind of. You never know what you're getting with Roseanne, so it's just like, dude, just buckle up. It's gonna be awesome.
Right, it's gonna be good no matter what. No
Yeah,
matter
no
what comes
kidding.
out.
That's awesome. Well, like we do with all of our guests, the mantra of the Goslings is take up the broken sword of your father and strike down the darkness. So before we let you go, Jesse, any words of wisdom for our audience so that they might go forth and strike down the darkness?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, but what's coming to mind is a verse that I love out of 2 Timothy 2:10. And it says, "Therefore I endure all things for the sake of the elect, that they too may obtain their salvation in Christ Jesus with eternal glory." So, let us live so others can have that eternal glory.
That's awesome. Love it.
Fantastic, Jesse. Thank you so much. It's good to talk to you again.
Yeah.
And thanks for coming back for another interview. We really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Come back and we can, I hope you come back soon and we can have a discussion, a debate on who the Antichrist is.
Dude, I could
Who
Yeah,
is the
yeah.
Antichrist debate? That'd be fun.
I could
think it'd
just
be really cool.
Let's
You-
schedule that.
if I could get you, Tim Cohen, BJ, and like Nick and I don't even have to say a word.
I'm just going to moderate.
Yeah, we get. Oh, that'd be so
I'd
much
be a great
fun.
moderator.
That'd be the first Goslings debate, actually.
Yeah.
I'd be down for that. That'd be fun.
I think Michael Obama's the Antichrist.
Big Mike.
Big Mike
I
Obama.
can make a case for that. Hey, I'm I'm a
Okay,
lawyer.
now I'm
I can
afraid.
make a
Well,
case. Yeah.
I was kind of down for it if like Trump was the Antichrist. I'm like, all right, how bad could it be? It'd be kind of
Mike
fun.
Pence.
But
I can
if-
make a case for that.
But if Big Mike's the Antichrist, I'm afraid.
wait, there might be some plausibility to that because there is that imagery in Revelations of the woman and the beast.
Mhm.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
maybe. I mean, maybe.
Hey, you never know.
And you got that
Never
androgyny
know.
thing. You got that Baphomet thing going on.
Yep.
So, Ellen's right there, ready to do some, occult pose. Anyways.
That just reminded me of like those, what do they call them? Those like dancers that like
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I forget what those
What,
fun
The Blue Man
belly
Group?
dancers.
No.
It's a belly dancer. Nee, nee, nee.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Dancing on the dragon.
Yeah. I'm just waiting for all the arms to come out of Ellen.
No, all these
You know.
potential Antichrist people that we've been talking about, I wouldn't want to see any of them belly dance.
I mean, I'd like to see Trump belly dance.
Well, he does
Oh,
kind of belly dance.
maybe.
that
He does.
dance
He's got a cute
got.
little, he's got a cute little dance.
shuffle.
He's got a shuffle.
He
He's
does
got a like an old granddaddy shuffle.
Yeah, with his
Yeah,
little
man.
Burger King hands. He dances like me, Jesse. That's the thing. You know?
Yes.
I don't know how you dance. I don't know if I want to dance.
You'll never know how I dance, Jesse. That I can tell you.
Wait, I gotta say, there's a picture that's been going around on Twitter with Trump dancing with Melania. It's one of my favorite paintings I've seen, so maybe we could see him dance, but
Okay, good. It's in the cards.
Well, if he beats
Yeah.
all these charges and
The
gets
Trump
elected
card.
again, I bet he'd do a little dance.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I think
Yeah.
he will beat him. I think they're gonna,
Oh, you will
what
too.
happens, I think we're gonna see the indictments unsealed. And, once one's unsealed, they're all gonna be unsealed. And, what is it gonna do? It's gonna bring down the judicial system.
Yeah.
Put it into military or upper law. So
See, it's about the only thing you can do at this point. So much of it is broken.
Mm.
yeah.
Beyond repair. So I won't say anymore. I'll get us in trouble.
All
All right, Jesse. We'll do this
All right.
again. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. See you later.
See ya.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying this conversation, you like this interview, and you want to hear some more of it, including some down and dirty stuff we're not allowed to say here on YouTube, head on over to patreon.com/the Gosslings, sign up for one of our tiers, and enjoy some exclusive content.
That's right. And remember, keep it cool. And these are interviews.
That strike down the darkness.
That's right, baby.
A vertical punch.